Good morning, faculty. My name is Bob Key. We are gathered here today to talk about the anti-literacy law, and we're going to discuss why it matters today for us educators. Well, the anti-literacy law was enacted in 1849 by the General Assembly of Virginia. So this law made it illegal to teach black or enslaved or free people how to read or write. This law even went down to the church level where churches were told only to teach people orally. They were not allowed to teach with books or writing. Why was this created? Well, the main reason was fear. Lawmakers believed that if black people could learn to read or write, then they can organize, they can question injustice, and resist slavery. So this fear shows something important. If the lawmakers realized that if the black people learned how to read and write, they would question injustice, then it tells us that those in power knew they were being unjust. So let's look at this fear of education a little bit more. History shows us that keeping people from learning is one of the fastest ways to keep them powerless. Frederick Douglass, who was a slave, once said, "Knowledge makes a man unfit to be a slave." And so the leaders of Virginia understood this, and they feared that once enslaved people read words like freedom and justice, then they would eventually demand equality. So let's look at Nat Turner's rebellion and how it relates to this anti-slavery. Okay, Nat Turner in 1831, he was enslaved, but he learned how to read the Bible. And through this reading, he believed he was chosen to lead his people to freedom. So he led an uprising, which ended up leaving 55 white people dead. Although this rebellion was crushed quickly, it terrified slaveholders, and in response, the laws became stricter, which include the later anti-literacy law. But what does it show us? It shows us the danger of denying education. People are left powerless and hopeless. Rebellion and violence often follow, as we see in our communities today in the low impoverished areas. Modern parallels. Let's connect the dots. Even though slavery is gone, some communities still face barriers to education. Underfunded schools in poor neighborhoods struggle with fewer resources, larger class sizes, and outdated materials. Now, research backed this up. The U.S. Department of Education reports that schools serving mostly students of color receive $23 billion less funding every year compared to white schools. This gap affects teacher quality, school facilities, and student opportunities. The statistics are clear. Students in high poverty schools are about 5 times more likely to drop out than students in wealthier districts. Dropouts face higher risk according to the National Center for Education. The high school dropout rate is strongly linked to unemployment and incarceration. In fact, nearly 75% of state prison inmates did not finish high school. What does all this show us? Well, when students are denied a fair education today, communities suffer with higher crime rates, low income levels, and less hope for the future. Margaret Douglas was somebody who stood up for the black community. She was a white woman in Norfolk, Virginia. The anti-literacy law, she had a misunderstanding about this law because she believed that the free people, blacks, could be taught. So she began teaching free black children, but later on the police came knocking on her door, and she was fined and then went to court and was eventually found guilty and charged $1, even though the max fine was 100. But her story reminds us that one teacher can make a difference. Even in the face of law or systems that try to silence education, we still need people to stand up today. So why does this matter for us today? Why are we gathered here, faculty, staff? Well, the anti-literacy law teaches us that denied education hurt not just individuals, but whole communities. And research confirms the same truth. When schools fail, communities fail. But the opposite is also true. When we give students a strong education, we put the power back in their hands. We put the power to break cycles of poverty, the power to fight crime and hopelessness. We build communities that thrive. So in closing, I want to leave you with this thought. The classroom is more than a place of learning facts. It is the gateway to freedom and opportunity, just as laws once tried to silence education. Today's inequities can do the same if we let them. But as teachers, we hold the keys. We can either pass down cycles of struggle or we can break them by giving every child the tools of knowledge. Our classrooms are not just rooms, they are doorways to freedom. Thank you.